All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now off to fan favorites of shout outs and rants. We'll take the same order. Jonathan Armstrong, Matt Kelly, Karen Woody, Karen Moore, and I will bat fifth. Mr. Armstrong.
Yeah, on Tuesday night, I'm at best a mediocre tennis player. Probably not even that. But on Tuesday night, I managed to win a little tournament for the first time in my life by having three doubles games and winning all three of them at a state of heightened nervousness. Of course, on Tuesday night as well, somebody else was victorious in a doubles match. Sir Andrew Barron Murray, OBE, better known as Andy Murray. But last night, the Team USA had the downright bad manners, I have to say, as an Englishman, to knock Andy Murray out of the Olympics and thereby end his career. So, if we reflect back on that illustrious career, he spent 41 weeks as the world number one. He helped in a Davis Cup victory. He twice won the greatest tennis tournament of all at Wimbledon. He also won another lesser tournament, I'm just looking at my notes, something called the US Open, if that means anything to anyone on the call. He got two Olympic gold medals, one silver gold medal. And if it is all about the dollars, he ends up the fourth highest earning tennis player of all time. But it's not just about the tennis, I think, with Andy Murray. He's been an outspoken critic of divisive rules over remuneration for tennis players. He's been a real pioneer in areas of equality. He was, I think, the first or the second male tennis player to appoint a female coach. But what's lesser known, I think, is he was also, as a child of, I think, about 9, the victim of a mass shooter at his school. And when he was 9 or 10 years old, back in 1996, he hid under his desk at school as 17 people were gunned down by Thomas Hamilton, an acquaintance of his own mother's. And so I guess we pay tribute to Murray's tennis career, but I think we should also pay tribute to him as a human being to come from such an absolute desperate situation. It's unfortunate, isn't it, on your side of the Atlantic more than ours, that gun crime is ever with us. Deranged individuals who carry out these attacks are ever with us. But it's somehow touching that out of adversity, Murray has made a career as one of the tennis greats of all time.
What do you got for us today, Matt?
I have a rant against Senator Cynthia Lummis, who is a Republican from the state of Wyoming, and what she unveiled in legislation in Washington this week, which is the bill for it's called the Bitcoin Act, which will create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And I just want everybody to get their head around what we're talking about here. Bitcoin, which is an artificial made up currency expressly designed to avoid government control, and which really only seems good for ransomware attacks, money laundering, and other types of fraud. And now suddenly we have Republicans and libertarians, because the Libertarian Party signed on immediately to Lumen's legislation and thought it was great, that they are looking for a government bailout to create a strategic Bitcoin preserve for what exactly? What national calamity is going to befall the United States where we have to say Bitcoin is going to save the day? Stockpiles of COVID vaccine or smallpox vaccine, I get that. Preserves for oil and petroleum, I get that. Maybe for foodstuffs. But why on earth do we need a stockpile paid for by U.S. taxpayers, sponsored by Republicans and libertarians for a made up fictional currency that supposedly exists to avoid all government intervention? And really, this is just, as I've said before, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies generally, they are a gimmick. They are only there to help with illicit transactions. And when Bitcoin wasn't making enough money for the people who wanted to use it and play with it, they turned around and got a handout from Uncle Sugar to stabilize the price. That's all this is. I hope this legislation goes nowhere, as most legislation does in Washington, but this was just especially nutty. I want to say I couldn't believe it, but with the shamelessness of modern Republicans bending over for crypto, you know what? I absolutely do, and that is sad.
Karen Woody.
I was also gonna do an Olympics theme one, but I have to say, my shout out really is maybe trite as it is to our president, who I think is changed the narrative of the entire world in just the last few weeks. And I'm shouting out to Joe Biden for his incredible career of service for his entire life, one of the most successful presidents ever, and for his, I think, really unbelievable decision to step down and not run again. And I think that, like I say, has energized at least half of the United States and others. I guess it's probably energized the entire United States, some positively, some negatively. But it's such an unbelievable decision. It's so commendable and is an act of, I think, selflessness we don't see very often in politics. So it is very refreshing. I'm going to change my shout out to President Biden.
Karen Moore.
So I've got just a small rant before my shout out, and the rant is Olympics related because of all the complaints I used to get that American television would only broadcast American athletes holds true for Germany as well. And so instead of watching the beauty that is men's gymnastics, I was watching German women's judo matches, and for the life of me cannot seem to get away from if Germany's on, we watch it. If Germany's not on, we don't get to see it. That's just a small rant there. It's all irritating. But I have a big shout out. Kyiv School of Economics is developing a new executive MBA program, and I'm designing an ethics and governance course for them. So I went to my orientation today, which was very interesting, as I seem to be, at least in this group, I'm the only non-Ukrainian. My Russian seems to be completely useless, as Russian is not welcome I guess I'm gonna have to learn Ukrainian. But my shout out really goes to something that relates, Jonathan, to yours, which is as just a matter of actual practical course of the orientation, it was like, oh, now we're going to talk about our air raid protocols, not because we're worried that in theory we may have an air raid, but because they happen absolutely regularly and we don't want it to disrupt what we're doing. So this is our protocol. It should only disrupt the teaching for 5 minutes. You take a pause while everyone gets to the shelter and then we get right back online. We equip the shelter with all the tools needed to continue teaching. And so really a big shout out to the Kyiv School of Economics, but also to all of Ukraine for persevering and seeing a future through everything that they're going through, where an air raid protocol is just part for the course. It was dealt with the same way as how do you log on to your email accounts. My shout out.
I'm going to shout out today, and I'm going to shout out to women's gymnastics. I'm going to start with Simone Biles and her comment that being the GOAT of all time is a black job. Traditionally, the leader of the Americans women's gymnastics team is seen as America's sweetheart, starting with Mary Lou Retton, who went on a Wheaties box. Doesn't get any better than that. The U.S. gymnastics team has been fabulous. Simone Biles has come back from Tokyo in a way that has just blown me away. I've loved every minute of watching it, but I want to expand it out to women's gymnastics in a broader sense because starting with Olga Korbut, women's gymnastics was mandatory watching in the Fox household. Nadia Comaneci set a standard that they had to change the rules of judging. She was so good. And this U.S. women's team has put on some of the most beautiful displays of athleticism and artistry I have ever seen. So, shout out to the U.S. women gymnastics team. Shout out to women gymnasts. Shout out to the women gymnastics competition in the Olympics. I've thoroughly enjoyed this Olympic to date, and I can't wait till next week when track and field starts. So we now hit an hour and 30 minutes. That is our longest everything compliance ever. It may have been our best. I wanted to thank everybody and look forward to catching up with you guys in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.